Congratulations, you just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, amazing, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, folks, I want to know who told you that getting older means weaker, slower, and more broken. Because I think somewhere along the way, a whole lot of us, people over 50, bought into this idea that aches and pains and low energy and losing strength are just part of the deal. But what if that's not aging? What if that's just inactivity? And what if the real problem isn't your age, it's how you've been taught to train or not train your body? So today's guest is here to flip this entire narrative on its head. Today I sit down with Heath Jones. Heath is an exercise scientist. He's a former Army medic. He's the founder of Active and Ageless gyms. This is a fitness company dedicated to helping people over 50 rebuild strength, energy, and confidence. And here's the wild part. After a whole bunch of back injuries and surgeries, Heath was told to slow down. Instead, he doubled down. We're talking like marathons and ultra marathons and big wave surfing and boxing, you name it. And now he's helping everyday men and women over 50 do the same thing, which is take back control of their bodies and start living strong again. So into this episode, we're going to dive into why most people over 50 feel quote unquote old and how you can fix that. The truth about strength training, mobility, and staying pain-free, and why discipline, not motivation, is really the key to long-term results. So, if you've ever felt like your body is working against you, or maybe your best days are behind you, this episode's gonna hit ya. So, whip up your protein smoothies and let's meet Heath.
I was a registered nurse for many years, working in emergency, working in various departments within the hospital. I was then in the military for 4 years. It was around that time I became a trainer. And it was probably also around that time I realized that I probably had a bit of a passion for, training mature adults and not just training for, beach muscles and aesthetics, and kind of training for longevity or just overall health and wellness. So yeah, I then I probably after the military I was on the oil rigs, oil and gas platforms for many years, 8 to 10 years, and I still, even before starting in that industry, I had the dream to start a gym for over 50s. You'd go to gyms and sure probably part of your journey, you've seen a lot of people that were at gyms that were for, I'm going to say younger people, but just at open gyms. And, people we looked a little bit intimidated, probably doing the wrong exercises. And, I suppose I started realizing that, I wanted to help these people. And from the business side of things, I realized there was probably a demand for that as well. So, that when I eventually got out of the oil and gas and hospital industries and that, I probably, I put it all in. I put it all in my first gym. So there was that side of things, and also my own journey as well. I have had quite a few, not so much health complications, but musculoskeletal complications, multiple back injuries or multiple back surgeries from injuries I sustained in the military. And, there was a period of time in my life where I was quite inactive because of back pain, back surgeries, being told to, not really do a lot, not to kind of, exacerbate the injuries. And, I thought that was the right thing to do for many years. And I kind of believed that I was aged beyond my years. So I could probably, probably would just say relate to people that were older than me purely because of my injuries. And, I could probably feel their pain. They could feel my pain kind of thing. So, yeah. And then when I started to kind of come out of that slump, that physical slump, and realizing that being inactive and protecting my back, what I was told by so many people that's the right thing to do. When I started coming out of that and realizing that the best thing to actually do is to move your body, to move it appropriately.
Yeah.
To move it, according to whatever conditions you may have. That's when I started realizing that there was plenty of other people out there in a similar position to me that were probably a little bit older, and they actually just needed to move their body, move it the right way, move it with, to have a specialist trainer that could show them what to do. And then it kind of all just come together, I suppose. And, with my background in the medical field, but also my own personal journey. And Yeah, about what 6 years ago, I opened my first gym, Active and Ageless, and it's been a journey since then. We got a couple now, and yeah, still loving what I do.
Active and ageless. All right, I love it. I want to talk about a bunch of this here, but before we go any further, folks can probably tell you got an accent there. Tell us where you are, where you located in the world. How many locations do you have at this point with your active and ageless gyms?
Yeah, I'm in Sydney, Australia. I grew up on the Gold Coast, which is about an hour flight north of here. So I moved down to the Big Smoke, Sydney, a few years ago now, 20 years ago. So Sydney is still the biggest city in Australia. I live in Bondi Beach. I'm about 300 meters from the beach, which as soon as this podcast is done, I'll throw myself in the ocean because it's nice and hot here today.
Nice.
So yeah, first gym opened in 2020, right at the start of COVID. So it was
Mm.
extremely challenging. We went through two shutdowns, and then we opened our second gym coming up to 2 years ago soon, which is in Canterbury, also in Sydney. And yeah, we're doing a joint venture at the moment with the nursing home group for specific kind of our really low impact exercises up back in the home state of Queensland. And yeah, just signed a lease this week for another location here in Sydney, a little bit further south. So yeah, doing another one. Same concept. We're a group fitness, so hopefully it's not as hard to set up as the first and second location. The same programs, the same offerings, same timetable. But yeah, it's that's where we're at now. So busy moments.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds really exciting. I love that concept. And I'm not going to lie to you, I have thought about that many, many times. Like, man, I'd love to open a gym it would be the Silver Edge gym and it would be for 50 and over. And, maybe I would franchise it. But man, there's a lot that goes into a physical gym. I've worked in actual gyms. I've seen the operations there. I know the capital layout for not just the space, but the equipment. Of course, then you've got bringing in trainers, all that stuff. So that's a pretty big hats off to you, man, because that's a really big commitment. And I love that that is your niche, right? That
Yeah.
50 and over. Yeah, well, all right. So I think it's just kind of interesting here. Before we go any further, you and I were talking before we hit record here. One of the interesting things about this podcast is our number one city almost for since the beginning of this podcast is actually Sydney, Australia. That's our number one listening city.
That's
Our number
awesome.
one country is far away, US. That's where I'm based. But yeah, something about you Aussies out there, especially on the East Coast, because it's Sydney, Melbourne, and I think Brisbane is usually in the top 10 cities, listening cities as
Yeah.
well. So the only non-US cities in the top 20, maybe even the top 20, are going to be you Aussies over there. So yeah, love it. All right, man. Well, I want to pull this apart a little bit. You had talked about, hey, part of my concept here is I enjoy training people, but maybe I want to transition from, I think, what did you say, the training young dudes for beach muscles and more
Yeah.
how do we train for being badass grandparents as opposed to that. And I think you're exactly right. Can you talk about just that gym intimidation, overcoming gym intimidation? Because as I work exclusively with people 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it's tough sometimes to get them to go to a gym. And I get it. You go into a commercial gym. I don't know if it's probably pretty similar there, but here there's probably going to be bad music blaring. There's probably going to be children basically as the personal trainers there, and they're shredded. They're probably wearing skimpy clothes, and people, the big dudes are over there grunting and grinding away with the barbells, and the whole thing could be really intimidating, can it? So when somebody comes into your facility as you're thinking through, okay, I want to make this a place where this demographic is comfortable. How did you kind of change that environment? How do you change that vibe?
Yeah, I suppose right from when they first come in the door, or even the first conversation on the phone, which is usually how we first speak to people. Some people come straight in, whether they're referred or they're a walk-in. But yeah, I suppose right from the start, it's more of a personal approach. I mean, you've seen big box gyms before where you just become a number. And I
Mhm.
never wanted to have a business, never wanted to have a gym where people were just a number. They are whoever they are. They're Margaret, they're Dennis, whoever, and they come with the personal history, their experience, sometimes their medical complications, their goals, what they want to do. Do they want to just, live a more fulfilled, wholesome life? They want to be able to pick up their grandchildren. They want to still go on hikes overseas and be able to lift up heavy, backpacks, whatever they want to do. Do they want to reduce some of their medications that they're on? So, it's instead of just, I think and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but the vast majority of people that are at, the big box gyms, they're there because they just want to look better. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But our people, they still want to look good. They want to look the best they can, but they're training for functionality. They're training for quality of life. They're training for not only lifespan, they're training for health span. So that's the years that you will live in absence of, significant disease or inactive or not being able to do a lot physically. So, thankfully we're there to help out with that, provide a vehicle for these people to do that. A lot of the exercises that we have in our classes are very practical exercises, or I would call them transferable exercises. One of them is literally mimicking picking up a small child, or
Sure.
lifting suitcases off a conveyor belt at the airport, things like that. It's doing this type of training will obviously you lose weight, you improve your posture and all those good things, but we're really focusing on training the individual for what they need at their age and stage of life.
Yeah. I love that more functional type of strength, right? There's nothing, like you said, nothing wrong with aesthetics. If you want to lose a little fat, build a little muscle,
Yeah.
look good with going to the beach, whatever. But I think at this stage of our life, the idea is to be strong and independent, rolling into your 70s, into your
Yeah.
80s, if you're blessed enough to live into your 90s, and to stave off that the last 20 years of your life as being dependent on somebody else. I love that. Well, let me ask you this. I'd love to hear what's your programming philosophy. You had mentioned earlier, you do this as kind of, is everything group? Do you have free gym? Are you a strength guy, a cardio guy, a conditioning guy? What does it look like for folks that come in and want to work out?
Yeah, sure. So I based the way I set up our timetables loosely based on the ACSM, which you might know, the American College of Sports Medicine, where it is in all group classes. So we do strength classes, 3 days a week, conditioning classes a couple of days a week.
Mhm.
We offer flexibility classes, several of those a week. But in terms of in the actual class, I like to, once again, because we're not training just for aesthetics, we're not yet meaning, looking a certain way. I try to cover off on the whole body in one day. So push, pull, upper body, lower body, core, with the conditioning classes, they get a little bit more, would you say, creative in there, a bit of proprioception, a bit of agility, balance, reflexes, and stuff like that, while still getting the heart rate up. So, and then we have a flexibility class, it's a yoga based class. We use a lot more equipment than a yoga class with, like sticks and straps and
Mhm.
a few other things in there, so foam rollers and stuff. So, yeah, most people would train with us probably 3 days a week. I usually recommend doing, say, if you're doing 3 or 4 days a week, I would say, do two strength, maybe one conditioning, one flexibility class kind of thing, just to get a, nice balanced approach to your training throughout the week. So, yeah, I work really hard when I do the programming just to balance the classes. And as you know, if you go and train for hypertrophy, for the listeners out there, hypertrophy is just building muscle as in one particular part of the body. You might go and do, say, a chest session one day, which is what a lot of people do, but you won't be able to train that part of your body again for sometimes a good few days afterwards, or to the full extent anyway, because you're quite sore and you've got that,
Yeah.
that muscle soreness. Whereas our classes are designed in a way that you can pretty much train most days. Because you're working the body globally or all over the body. Yes, you might be sore in some parts, but you're not going to be so, would you say, focused. You're not going to have that focused soreness in one particular part of the body. You can't train for a few days. So and I just try to not only training body parts, as in training muscles, I try to train the movement. So I
Training
think
movements, not muscles. Yeah, I love it.
yeah, so
Yeah,
that's you would have heard that too, Kev. It's
sure.
train the movement, not the muscles. So
Yep.
training the movement, like I said, it's very functional. Meaning, instead of say, targeting biceps, for example, we'll do something where we'll do a squat with a bicep and then maybe a press. So there's multiple movements if you break that down. That entire move, which that's practical. That's functional. They're kind of moves that you might use and normal everyday life, where you're picking up a pot plant from a garden bed and you're putting it on the shelf or whatever, or once again, picking up a small child and, playing with them or whatever. So instead of just doing like that hypertrophy type training where you're focusing on one muscle group to get that really big, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. So I am a huge fan of basically exactly what you're talking about. 3 days a week of professionally designed, age appropriate, functional strength training. And then a couple days a week, that's going to be more for your cardio. I think one of the things that this age demographic misses the most is, it sounds like you guys have this programmed in, but that flexibility, mobility, and balance, right? Because those things start to go, and it's not going necessarily, especially in 50s, 60s. Maybe you have a case in 70s and 80s, but you're not losing your mobility, your flexibility, your strength, your balance because you're getting old so much as you are because you just don't use it, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
getting into the gym, starting to move a little bit, absolutely love it. All right, well, Heath, I've got the $1 million question for you here. Should men and women over 50 do the dreaded deadlift?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I was going to say we're going to have to cut this thing short if you said no, but all right, go. Why? Because you see that all the time, right? You say for whatever you do, people over 50 don't deadlift, or maybe it's
Yeah.
squat or bench press, whatever, right? Yeah, explain. Why would you say yes?
Deadlift or a hip hinging move is one of the most functional movements the human body can do.
Thank you. Yes.
There's a few exercises out there, the hip hinge or the deadlift being one, where I say it's kind of like a nose stoned, left unturned. When we do the move, we do it properly. You're doing your lower body, your lower back, your glutes, your upper back, your back, your deltoids, core. So we're targeting a lot of muscles. And one thing too is when a lot of people do deadlifts, like the other day, I had a couple of ladies were doing dumbbell deadlifts. And I think one of them had two 4 kilogram dumbbells. And I go, how's that feel for you out of 10? Oh, yeah, it's easy. And like, boom. I think I doubled the weight. And I was like, well, look, don't look at the number on there. If you
Right.
can't, with good technique, I'll take them out of your hands. And she was doing them really well. And I'm like, I've given you 6 kilograms. I don't even know what that is in pounds. 6 kilograms is about 10 pounds, thereabouts.
15 pounds, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less than double. But anyway, I put the weights in her hand, and I told her what I actually lied to her. So they are 6 kilograms. She's like, wow. And I go, actually have a look down there. And I think I put in 2 8s in her hand. And I think that's one exercise, because we're using such big prime moving muscles, our hamstrings,
Mhm.
our glutes, our quads, our upper back, you can lift a lot heavier generally than what you think. There's some time, it's usually quite often is their mind is, the biggest inhibiting factor. You're doing an exercise like that well, and you're doing it with good technique, you can challenge yourself. And it's an anabolic exercise where you're moving such big muscle. There's so many other benefits to doing those, compound lifts. Compound lifts meaning, we're using multiple joints, multiple muscles, multiple, different
Yeah.
groups of muscles all in that one move. So deadlifts, 1,000,000%. They need to be
Right on.
done. They need to
Yeah.
be done for the functionality of them as well.
Sure.
Yeah, because we're so inactive with our glutes. Our glutes are our biggest muscle, or should be our biggest and
Should
most
be.
powerful
Yeah.
muscle in the body. But because we do what we're doing right now so often throughout the day, we're
Yeah.
sitting on our butt. We're not using the glutes. And if they're not working, then we're doing, if we're picking up something off the ground, a lot of times we're using lower back muscles, which are spindly little muscles. They're nowhere near the size of the glutes. And then, they blow out, we have back injuries, and, because the glutes are just deactivated, they're not doing their job. So, yeah, they need to be trained, and they need to be trained quite heavy too.
Yeah. I think there is nothing more functional than bending down and lifting something off the ground. You had mentioned, I think,
Yeah.
getting your suitcase or lifting up your grandkid. That I would submit that you don't want to forfeit that basic functional movement lightly. So yeah,
Yeah.
it drives me nuts when I see that. And I think it's getting better, but once upon a time there was a list of top 5 exercises people over 50 shouldn't do. And every time I read that, it's like, I'm
I've never seen
61,
that.
getting ready to be 62. And I'm like, no. That's, stop that. Yeah. I also think you talked about, hey, this posterior chain, those big hamstrings and glute muscles. When we talk about the reasons why a lot of people would avoid deadlifts, is probably because, well, I've got a tweaky back or a sore back. I would submit also that a strong back is a much healthier back than a weak back. You are much less likely to get injured with a strong back than you are with a weak back. And one of the things I see, I'm sure you see this all the time as well, is we'll have clients come in not injured, but with achy something, name the joint, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, 2, 3 months into a well structured strength training program, they go, wow, my back feels
Yeah.
fabulous. I
Yeah.
haven't felt this good in a decade. And you're like, yeah,
No, I
see?
can't tell you how many times I've seen that when, you
Yeah,
get a person that walks in and they've never done any exercise in their life or they haven't for decades. And they're like, I come in here, I want to do some exercise. I want to get fit. I want to get strong. I want to get more mobile, but I probably shouldn't do too much because my knees hurt, my back hurts, my shoulders hurt. I'm basically a mess. Okay. Have you had, it was kind of probably a little bit of an internal joke that I have. I always say, have you been in a car crash or like a football tackle? Have you had a fall from heights or something? 90% of the time the answer is a definitive no.
right.
Okay, cool. And I just look, just trust the process. If we've got no major trauma on our musculoskeletal system, there's a very good chance just that those muscles aren't doing the work. So we've got all those extra stress on the joints. You got those extra stress on the joints from not having the motor control or the muscle control to be able to do those moves. You're going to have pain, and and you have seen it so many times before. Exactly what you said is probably why I was smiling when you were saying that. I'm remembering one particular lady. It wasn't all that long ago. She goes, "Oh, Heath, 3 months into it, I don't feel any of my knees." I'm like, I told you this at the
Yeah,
start. She didn't believe me, I get it. It's your own body. You're freaking out, and you actually think you're a lot more broken than what
yeah,
you are, and it's purely because your muscles aren't doing their job.
yeah. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite sayings is Mark Ripito says, strong people are harder to kill. So getting strong is is always preferable to being weak, right? Especially as we're aging. And I
Yeah,
think there's also, there's this medical term sarcopenia, which is
yeah,
age, defined as age-related muscle loss. I
yeah.
hate that term
Mm,
because, they'll say, well, after the age 30, we lose 1% of muscle every year or whatever the statistic is, right? And look, you know, aging is undefeated, has a 100% track record of being, the end is the same for all of us. But I would humbly submit that, again, specifically talking to my 50, 60, even my 70-year-olds, you're losing muscle at that stage of your life through inactivity, not because you're old.
yeah,
So there's some really good science now showing people in their 70s, 80s, even 90s that are building muscle with correct nutrition and, programming that meets them where they are. So yeah, never too late. I don't want anybody buying into that. It's all downhill from here kind of philosophy. Certainly, I know I think I was in my mid 40s as I looked around at my peer group at the time, I was very, very unhealthy. That was the prevailing attitude. Everybody, all my friends were, they drank, some of them smoked, they all had beer bellies, and it was everybody had aches and pains, and it was just kind of that. It's just this is how it is, that fatalistic attitude. And somewhere, in my late 40s, had a little health scare, and that's why I'm here doing what I do today. But I'm here to tell you it's night and day difference. I'm like I said, I'm 61, almost 62, and I feel as healthy and fit and
yeah.
strong and vibrant and purpose driven as I have ever in my life.
Awesome.
And I want to share that, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
you get that, vibe. All
Well, so
right.
you're inspiration, and that's one of the reasons why you do what you do as well, because you can inspire others to do
Right.
that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my mission, man. Yeah. Let's go. All right. So I want to talk about the role of just some other lifestyle factors. So we got people coming into your gym. They're like, hey, maybe they haven't worked out before. Maybe it's been quite some time, even decades since they touched any weights. You got them doing some workouts. Are you talking to these people about nutrition? Because that's kind of one of the other key tenets if we're going to improve our health, change our body composition, lose a little fat, build a little muscle, all that fun stuff. Do you guys mess with nutrition? Do you give advice? What's your philosophy there?
We can do. We're not qualified nutritionists. We sometimes refer out. We work closely with some dietitians, but I mean, we do challenges, and within those challenges, we have booklets that are written by the dietitian that we've worked with over the years. I always do. I mean, I'm really big on nutrition myself. I think nutrition can be pretty individualized with what people should take, should we should eat. Me personally, I eat pretty clean, pretty lean. I try to have a low inflammatory diet purely because of all the injuries I've had over the years. It works for me. Yeah, and I suppose I do teach my members that, if you can kind of, quite often we do eat, the SAD diet, which we've borrowed from you guys over there, for the viewers that haven't heard of the SAD diet, which is the
Mhm.
standard American diet, or we've coined it nowadays the standard Australian diet, which is a high carbohydrate or high processed carbohydrate diet. We know that those certain kind of corn syrups, or even the high GI rices or breads and pastas, they can cause quite a bit of inflammation in the body, which can contribute to pain. So I suppose I'm a big proponent of having an adequate amount of protein. I think they say a lot of people either don't get enough protein, or if they do, they're getting it from sources which is not the best source. Like they might get it from a hamburger as opposed to having a nice piece of salmon or even a steak. So yeah, I think protein is extremely important if you want to prevent, like you talked about before, sarcopenia, which is muscle decline that can be associated with aging, as opposed to what you said, your initial term, which you said kind of makes you cringe a little. And it's true, it's
Yeah.
just related muscle decline. It can be associated because we've seen it. You and I both have seen that people have been able to maintain their muscle mass, but it's really important that they're eating accordingly, because you can't train away a bad diet. So you
Yeah.
can exercise all you want, but if you're not eating adequately, if you're not eating the right amount of protein, and you're not getting all your macros, especially with your healthy fruits and vegetables, you're going to struggle to achieve any health goals, really. So yeah, I probably that's kind of what I'm a big proponent of, and I do give that. So I'll pass that advice on to my members, because I think it's really important. And the thing is too, I think a few years back, a lot of unhealthy food is made tastier. So that's why the big companies of the world, big food manufacturing companies, have designed these kind of foods, because they do taste good and they get people hooked. But if you eat well, you eat really good produce, really good fruit and vegetables, good meats, man, I think that tastes amazing. I love it.
Yeah. That's pretty delicious too, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our
I
food system is, yeah.
should plan throughout the week. Like last night, here was my whitefish night. Every Tuesday night, salmon night. Monday night, steak night. I have my meals planned out, and I don't expect everyone to do that, but I do it for simplicity. And I know that I pretty much eat the same every night, and I have done for a good few years now. One, I don't need to decide what I'm going to eat for the night. Some people say to me, "Don't you get bored?" Absolutely not. I can't wait for Tuesday nights when I have my salmon, and I love it. I do it every week, and it
Yeah.
always it's good and it's healthy.
I love that idea of having. I hadn't thought about that, but having Monday night's my steak night, Tuesday night's my salmon
Yeah,
night, maybe it's taco night the next night, whatever. But having those set meals, yeah, that appeals to me. I have to give that some thought. But
simple.
I'm definitely tracking with you on the whole nutrition thing,
Yeah,
right? If because it is highly individual, right? We're all bio
yeah,
individuals, and what is optimal for me may or may not be optimal for you. But there are some table stakes. That being, hey, you should have some good, clean protein sources, and you should eat mostly whole foods. And look, there are PhD chemists that are hired by these big food companies to make this ultra palatable, crazy delicious food. And they get focus groups to study the exact amount of crunch and texture and sweetness and salty and fat, just to hit this, what they call, that the industry calls that the bliss point.
yeah,
So these foods are engineered to cause you to overeat. They're calorie dense and they're nutrient sparse. Just really bad news. I don't know if you realize this, but over here in the U.S., we've just recently got a new food pyramid
yeah.
where the
Sort of.
primary gist of the whole thing is eat real food, right?
Yeah, it's so
And then
good.
from there, there's other things, but that is a bold statement because for the
Yeah,
longest time, at least for us, our policy has been, I don't want to say dictated, that's a little harsh, but certainly heavily influenced by big food, big ag, big pharma. And now, when we have our health secretary saying something like "eat real food," well,
Yeah.
that's a slap in the face to Kellogg and to
Yeah.
to
I,
Kraft and to
I agree.
Nestle and to these giant companies. They don't want us to eat real food, and certainly the pharma companies aren't interested in us eating real food. But it's best thing for us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, I think I did a happy dance when that came out. It was probably 10, 20 years too late.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, when I was looking at it, it was like, yeah, this new food pyramid is good. It's
yeah,
what we need. It's what I've probably eaten according to that the new pyramid for a good few years now. I mean, I'm 40. It's about to turn 48 in basically a month. Um, and now I train. I mean, I still train very hard. I train. We still do all sorts of crazy fitness challenges, and I believe I have my diet pretty well dialed in. Man, I feel as good as I feel better in some ways when I was in the military 15 years ago. I'm obviously extremely fit when I was in the army, but um, I was always broken, and I'd probably consume as much beer and pizza on the weekends to kind of
yeah,
counteract any of the fitness you did during the week. But not only was it, when we trained back then, we were trained, twice a day, every day really, and you never gave your body time to recover and rest. Whereas now, I take recovery as important and nutrition as important as the exercise component. So yeah, so it just if you want, I suppose your optimal health at any age, you really need to understand your food. And this is the same with the exercise component to it as well. I say to people, all well and good, you come to us with the experts in exercise, but there's the most important person in the world should always be yourself. So you need to learn about what exercise you should be doing, what you shouldn't do, and your recovery, what you should and shouldn't do, your nutrition. Once you get that dialed in, it's a journey. And I actually really, encourage people to learn about what foods work best for them. Some people, certain foods don't agree with them for whatever reason, but when you start to dial that in, this is why I have my weekly program set out with food, because of just those foods work. Those foods work. I feel good, I have energy, and I recover well too. So yeah, food's great, food's fun, and I love it.
yeah. Likewise, and I'm with you because you're right. When you get all the lifestyle pieces dialed in, you'd mentioned your recovery, your nutrition. Certainly, I would throw sleep in that. I
Yeah.
think you would agree with
Well,
that. And the
yeah.
and the workouts, man, it's like you're almost unstoppable, right? Like you'd mentioned, hey, I feel strong, fit, and capable as I ever have in my life, including back when I was in my younger man army
Yeah.
days. So that's incredible, right? So I'm with you. I work out in a gym, just strength training 3 days a week. I do 3 days a week of jujitsu, so I go pretty hard with the guys there. And look, I'm far and away the old dude in my gym, in the jujitsu gym. I occasionally surf, I play some pickleball, but I love being able to be capable and fit and active and be able to do stuff. And it is the only reason I can do that is because I've dialed in, like you said, the nutrition and the managing my stress and the recovery and taking that seriously, dialing in my sleep and all the healthy things, right? It's not rocket science. It's just setting up my life in a way that allows me to have this optimal health and do the things I love to do. Which brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, because obviously not everybody feels the way you and I do about fitness and nutrition, right? And it can be really tough. And we see this classically, and I'm sure you as a gym owner must see this. You have this onslaught of people. I'm assuming you guys have celebrate New Year the way we do, but we have all these New Year's resolutioners coming in. We offer virtual programs, so we usually have a pretty big bunch of new people coming in. What do you have to say about mindset and motivation? Because it seems to me that motivation is high when you start anything, but that's kind of at best your fickle friend. It's not going to stick around for long, right? You're not going to be motivated per se for 6 months or 6 years. How do you handle that with clients when it comes to making that transition from, hey, I'm motivated, I want to lose a few pounds, to, hey, this is my lifestyle. I've changed my identity. This is who I am now. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Mate, it's a tough one. It is very hard to motivate someone else. We can
Mm-hmm.
provide the resources, the education, sometimes the scare tactics,
Mm-hmm.
but I think motivation has to come from within. So, I always, this is, and once again, so I refer back to myself, but I have a why. Why do I do this? And I tell other people, well, when we do our goal setting sessions with people, that I always say you're going to have a why, whether that's you want to, still continue to travel back to your homeland of Italy until until you're into your 80s and 90s, or you want to see your grandchildren graduate, or you simply want to reduce your medication. You got to have a why. So there's going to be days, and you and I go through this. There's some days you wake up and it's cold or it's hot or you didn't sleep well or whatever it may be, and you just don't want to really exercise that next day. And I suppose to me, I kind of, that's when I kind of think about, what's my why? My why is I just want to be as fit as I can at any age, or I want to be, and I want to be an inspiration to other people to do the same. So I think that helps me get motivated. Sometimes I also say to people, because sometimes exercise is hard. We don't need to always train at 100% intensity 100% of the
Right.
time. So I think some people think that, if you're going to go and exercise, it's always going to be extremely hard. So if you haven't slept well, you're not feeling 100% or whatever, you shouldn't really do something. I think there's always something you can do. Go for a walk. I remember a couple of weeks back, I had an operation on my eye, and for a week or so afterwards, I felt a bit lousy. I wasn't sleeping that well, so I did a lot of walking in that week. Yes, it wasn't high intensity. It wasn't high impact. It got me outdoors. It was, it was very hot at the time. It was beautiful weather, so I still got out there and did something. But yeah, no, I think I think that we can make it. I mean, human brain is designed to find reasons why we shouldn't do something, and exercise is quite often is one of those things. Like why you don't want to train today, but I ask you a question, Kev. Have you ever regretted a workout?
No, never. Yeah. Now there's been times when I've kind of just not been feeling it walking into the gym, but I have never left the gym regretting a workout.
I mean,
100% no.
I always say to people, before you train is, especially training first thing in the morning, I don't think there's been ever a time in my life that I've woken up in the morning and go, yes, I'm going to exercise now. That's, thousands of sessions I've done in my life. Me
Right.
personally, I don't think there's ever been a time that I've done that. However, I get up, I go through the motions. I usually have my exercise kit there set up, my shoes, my shorts, my shirt, whatever, water bottle, good to go. Don't think about it. Get up, put it on. If you think about it too much, you ruminate, you can quite easily come up with, a list of excuses as to why you shouldn't train that day. But as soon as you start training, the endorphins start kicking in. You're like, hey, this is not so bad after all. You finish your session, you're like, I am so thankful and proud of myself that I did that session, because now I feel amazing. So I think with regular exercising, you have that foresight that once you finish your session, you're going to feel amazing. But it does take, a lot of time and conditioning to get to that point. That once again, you and me, both know, I've been doing it for a long time now. That we can wake up, not feel 100%, but you will feel 100% better
Yeah.
after exercise session. Now, I think if for the listeners out there, once they get to that point in their life, or their exercise and training journey, that is beautiful, because it makes it so much easier to get out of bed and go and get that session done, because at the end of it you're going to feel so much better than you did prior.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. That feeling when you finish that workout, you've accomplished something difficult, you've got some endorphins, got some good hormones going for you. I feel like that accomplishment and that confidence you get from the gym bleeds into all other areas of your life. Very
Absolutely.
often, the
Yeah.
most difficult thing I've done in the day is done, at 6:30 in the morning when I'm doing my workout. The rest of it, for me is I'm doing podcasts, I'm coaching clients, or, whatever I'm doing. The hardest part is already done. It's behind me. I've done something difficult. So I feel like there's just this sense of accomplishment. It bleeds over into everything. Absolutely love it. So yeah, I think that's a critical part of staying motivated and making that transition as somebody who, hey, I want to get in shape because, here in the US, it's getting ready to be summer. I'm going on vacation. I want to look good in my bikini or something. There's that motivation. But when that turns into, hey, I'm setting up my life differently. I'm becoming the kind of person who goes to the gym and enjoys the effects of that and makes healthy choices that really honor my body. I love the idea of, you had mentioned having your folks know their why. I think that's really critical. I love the idea of people actually thinking about and writing out a health mission statement. Why is this
Yeah.
important to me? And you probably know this as well. We'll ask people, hey, why do you, they'll often come in and they'll say, well, I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, because I want to be healthy. Well, why is that important to you? Well, because this. And then why is that important to you? Well, and you ask why 5 different times. And eventually you get to probably the real cause. Maybe it's an insecurity. Maybe it's, it's something, but spend some time really questioning, why is this important to you? You get through some of the superficial things. Maybe you get into some things that aren't so pretty, but you kind of work through all that and you end up with something, hopefully, that looks like, hey, I want to be healthy and around for a long time. I want to, want to watch my grandkids grow up. I want to play with them, etc. I want to go on vacation, enjoy things. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely love it. All right. So as we're just kind of wrapping up here, what else do you have? What advice do you have to somebody who's listening to this and wants to get started on some sort of a strength training regimen? Just wants to get going. Maybe they're nervous, gym intimidation, don't know what to do. How do we talk to people to get them to start to adopt this lifestyle, eating healthy, working out, trying to be strong, fit, and capable?
Yeah. I think a lot of people when they first come in, like I said before, they may not have trained ever in their life. They may not have trained for decades. You're not alone. There's a lot of people in that same situation. So, and I get it, it must be challenging and intimidating to go to somewhere and it's a complete overhaul of your life. But trust the process, trust the experts. We've been doing it for a long time. There's plenty of people in your position that started, like you, that started from we'll just say a low base point, and they've really overhauled their life and they are a brand new human being. It takes time. If you've had 10, 20, 30 years of inactivity and, probably not the best habits or the best mindset habits, it's not going to happen, within a couple of weeks. But, with consistent practice, I look at the triad of health, the mindfulness or the mental health on one side of the triangle, the nutrition on one side of the triangle, and the exercise component on the other side. If you can kind of learn a lot about those, how they, would you say, your best approach to that triad of health, and you look at experts, get it, get a nutritionist should you need to, learn as much as you can, be a sponge, and just be consistent. And within a short amount of time, it's a good few months with really consistent practice, is you will start to notice a difference. I usually say within 6 to 8 weeks you really start to feel better. Your
Yeah.
posture is more upright. You're craving better foods, which is great. You're
Yeah.
sleeping better. You're happier. You've met friends at the gym. And like, I mean, this is really cool. A story. So my first gym in Hurstville, which I've had now for 6 years now, 5, 6 years now. There's a big group of them. There's about 10 of them who are going to Bali this weekend. So, which is really cool. And, these people probably wouldn't have met if it wasn't for Active and Ageless. Now they're all going with a big group of them. One of the daughters actually messaged me a couple of days ago saying, this is, be proud of what you've done, which is, it almost brings a tear to my eye that all these people are hanging out. And, so there's the exercise component, but you're going to meet people
Yeah.
people in a similar trajectory to you. They're all there doing the same thing. They want their best for their own life. They want their, their optimal health. So, intimidation, I completely get it. It must be intimidating, but if you find the right place to go to, if you've got a friend there, if you've got a relative or joined with a friend, you got that accountability, and it's, I
Yeah.
suppose it makes it slightly less intimidating for you. But yeah, get it done if you want the best, most optimal life possible. Is just get the body moving, because you will notice a difference and you'll thank yourself so much. So yeah, you just got to start.
Got to start. Yeah, got to start and got to be consistent. I love that. That is really solid advice. I think that you got to meet yourself where you are with self-love, with patience, but I'm 100% tracking with you on your metrics. I think you give it 6 to 8 weeks of is about the time people start to feel the
Yeah,
difference. Like you
yeah,
said, the mood, the energy. I'm not crashing at 3 p.m. in the afternoon anymore. I'm sleeping better. All of those metrics, I'm getting stronger. I've got more confidence. My posture is improving, maybe some pain subsiding. Then you give it another 6 or 8 weeks, and somebody you haven't seen in a while says, "Oh my God, you look great. What are you doing?" Right?
yeah.
And that I think just goes a long ways towards refilling that motivation well, if you will, keeping people going. All right. Well, I guess, Heath, then before we wrap up here, if there are any venture capital folks out there or any investors who are looking to invest, we got Heath out here with Active and Ageless gyms. Let's cover all of Asia Pac with those things. And then if you guys want to do something over here in my hemisphere, I'm willing to talk to you about putting Silver Edge gyms all over the US. Maybe we do something together. But Heath, before we wrap up, tell people how can they connect with you, how can they learn more for all my folks that are in your neck of the woods, how can they potentially find you, join your gyms, all the good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So, well, our gym Instagram page is at Active and Ageless Gym. Locations in Hurstville, Canterbury, soon to be Janali and Sutherland. My personal Instagram is Heath Jones 1.618. So, I post on there the different kind of physical challenges and that we do, crazy stuff that me and a few of my mates do. So, but yeah, I'd love to come into one of the gyms and say hello, and we can do an assessment on you, movement assessment, do your free class, and we do events every kind of say 4 months or thereabouts, and healthy aging events, different kind of guest speakers and that. But we open those up to the public as well. So yeah, and don't be intimidated. Like it's easy for me to say that. Try not to be intimidated because we're pretty nice, and our members are so nice. And I bet you wouldn't be able to walk into too many other gyms around the place and you get 2 or 3 people introduce themselves, other members introduce themselves straight away, but they will do at our gym because it's a great bunch of people and it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely love it, man. All right. Well, hey, I'm so glad I got a chance to connect with you. I absolutely love your mission, love what you're doing there. I love the idea of having a physical gym for this specific age demographic. Man, I appreciate you taking the time, coming on the podcast, sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and all of your passion with us. I just encourage you to keep up the great work, man.
Thank you so much, and you too.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are over 50 and you feel frustrated or stuck and you want a clear plan, I invite you to book a free clarity call with me. You can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/419. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 critically important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to please click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please consider giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.